Hello, I'm Chloe Singer-Johnston from Minds and Money, and today we are joined by Russell Bradford. Russell is the Managing Director of Aston Minerals. Thank you so much for being with us today, Russell.
Thank you. That's very kind of you. Thank you very much.
Firstly, could you give us a brief overview and let us know some key highlights of Aston Minerals?
So, Aston Minerals, we're a company. Our assets are in Ontario, actually just south of Timmins. We have two deposits there. We have a gold deposit, which consists of two areas. There's 1.5 million ounces of gold there. And the big asset that we have is the Boomerang Nickel project. And funny enough, when Dale was drilling for the gold, he stepped over a fault and then he found the nickel. And then he went further south, and that's how we discovered, well, that's how Dale discovered the Boomerang nickel deposit. So we have over 1 billion tons at 0.29 nickel there. So over 2 million tons of nickel, all nickel sulfide, all sulfide material, no laterite, no funny nickel. And the gold is 1.5 million ounces, which is to the north of the Boomerang. And that's all free gold. So, yeah, that's essentially what Aston has in their portfolio at the moment.
Fantastic. And I see in your news that drilling has commenced at the Bardwell nickel prospect in Ontario. Could you tell us some more about that?
Okay, so we joined as a team the company in May this year. We did a strategic review of all the work that's been done. And last year there was over 28,000 meters of drilling done on this deposit. It's a big deposit, so a lot of drilling was done. What we did is then we went to site, we had a look at the geology, and what we've done now is we've purposely targeted areas within the nickel deposit where we need to drill. Before we did that, in August the end of July, beginning of August, we raised $11 million on the market. And now we're doing a targeted drilling program in certain areas around the Boomerang. We recently did some drilling in the B2 zone, which is in the top part of the Boomerang, and we extended the mineralization by 500 meters. There was an announcement made three weeks ago about that, and just this week as well about some of the assay results that came back. And now we've moved the rig down to the bottom part of the Boomerang in the Bardwell section of the Boomerang. And there we're doing infill and very selective targeted drilling. And what we want to get out of that is improve the measured and indicated category of the resource, and also try and bring the resource as close to surface as possible. So that rig is operating now. We'll be doing 11 holes, and that will be running probably until the end of November.
Perfect. And you personally have over 30 years of experience in global operations and project development. What excites you about the Aston Minerals projects?
Well, in my career, I've spent time on mines, operating mines, and then, managing mines, and then managing big operations and lots of people. And then you step out of that and you take that knowledge and experience, and then you move more into project development, project management. And I quite like being in that space where you've got a bit of a blank piece of paper. You surround yourself with good technical people, and it's almost a bit of an investigation. You feel a bit like a detective, and you kind of, well, if we try this and what about that? And you start putting the jigsaw together. When you're in operations, the script's there, right? It's day to day. You've just got to deliver. There's no room for error. 24 hours, you have to do X, Y, Z. That's why you make that revenue, and that's what shareholders want. In this world, you're taking all the experience that you've kind of had over the years and people you've met, and you put together a good technical team, and now you have to solve the puzzle. So I quite like in doing that, and from flow sheet development to infrastructure working in different parts of the world, putting projects together. So yeah, that's really what I quite enjoy about my role at the moment.
Yeah, sounds very interesting and nice and varied. And what shift are you noticing in the transition to an electric energy dominated society?
Well, I think if we had a beer in our hands, we could talk about this all night, but we don't. So I'm going to have to keep it nice and short. I think there's a few things. The first one is, excuse me, we're in North America, and I think in North America and in Canada, it's been very vocal about, what those countries want to do with their resources. In other words, what do they want to do with their minerals? What do they want to do in the decarbonisation world? Well, they want to make sure that they're self-sufficient. There's been a very strong statement about non-reliance on, let's, call it Chinese supply and Chinese, distribution of minerals from those areas, like Canada, into the Chinese economy. In China, there's almost been, well, look, we've got to now get our heads around this whole thing because it ain't going away. It's almost like a new industrial revolution. So I think, being in Canada, we've got to be very conscious of that and be very aware of whatever we eventually, do with the development of the mine. We have to be conscious what do the Canadian government and the Canadian people want to do with that asset. So I think that is a point that we have to take on board with this project. I guess the other thing is if we look at the larger picture and look, you look at battery manufacturers and gigafactories and all this stuff. I think what we're seeing in the nickel world is there's a massive drive for nickel production coming out of Indonesia. Massive. I mean, their growth is exponential. It's unbelievable. But with that, there's ESG issues, is there pollution? Is there the standards that you have to comply to in places like Australia or Canada? I don't know, I've not worked there, but I read articles and I know that a lot of people will have to make decisions in the future about getting their nickel from those type of environments. I think cobalt's another metal where a lot of people will say, well, if we need cobalt in these batteries, do we want to get it from this country? So, the Congo is a great example, right? So, I mean, everyone operates in their sphere, and that's it. And there's different ways of operating for different solutions. I suppose for us as Aston, we have to comply and we have to understand what the Canadian government want to eventually do with these large nickel resources. So yeah, that's kind of where we'll fit in. And I think that's what's going to be happening in the world. There'll be supply from this side of town, and then there'll be supply from this side of town. And one day, I think you'll drive your electric vehicle and it'll say on the battery, this nickel came from XYZ. And if you're happy with that, then you'll buy it. If you don't want nickel from there, then you make your choice, right? That's it. So
Yeah. Yeah. And you mentioned briefly, but how do you maintain such a positive relationship with the First Nations communities there?
well, it's interesting. Wherever we've worked and operated, there's always, I've said to community leaders and, First Nation leaders before, we can put a team together and we can go and raise capital. And, we're kind of grey haired now and that. So we've got a pretty good idea how to build a mine, right? We'll go and build the mine. It's fine. You just get the good engineers, you go and raise capital, you'll do it. I guess the big question is, as it is now with Aston, and when I met Tim and Stan, I said to them, they the two, First Nation leaders, I said, I haven't got a clue how to build a mine in your backyard. I mean, it snows, it's this and that. So we need help. We need you to help us, which they were very, kind of grateful that, we understand that we need to understand that type of environment we're working in. The other thing in Aston, we have our community manager, Rob, and Rob every month is on the ground. He's established a very good relationship with the First Nation groups there. We contribute, a certain percentage for every dollar we drill in the ground to community First Nation projects. So there's a good system in place. We operate in Timmins, and Timmins has some of the largest mining projects and operations in Canada. So I think it's a well-tested agreement structure with First Nation groups and mining companies in place. And we're no different. So I'm going to Canada in a couple of weeks' time to go to site. And on my list of things to do is then catch up with Stan and Tim and, give them an update on the project and that. But Rob does that monthly anyway. So it's dialogue, right? There's nothing to hide. And we've got to, before we do anything, we've got to always make sure that we, engage and communicate and notify, what we would like to do and then get that go ahead. So you've got to be respectful in who's back your job, right? I mean, getting the money in the engineers, that's the easy bit, to be honest with you. I mean, getting money is not easy, but it is when, you've got to make sure that you can operate in that backyard, right?
Absolutely. You also mentioned this, but in 2022, the Canadian government announced the Canada Critical Minerals Policy. How are their objectives relevant to your projects?
Well, there's 5 kind of key points there, and support the economic growth and competitiveness in that environment. Well, we're putting money into that area, we're drilling, we're employing people, and obviously as the project develops, that will continue to grow. Strong environmental management, that was a key point in the critical minerals policy. Well, you cannot build a mine without having, and you cannot get it permitted without understanding and getting that all in place. So we will follow to the letter exactly what is needed on that. The engagement and reconciliation with Indigenous peoples, well, we've just spoke about that, so we're following that as well. Drive an inclusive and diverse workforce. Well, obviously, as we grow, that will be very much a part of what we do. So that's, and that's how companies get put together now. And that's kind of just something that we will definitely do. And enhance global security and partnership with allies. Well, we're producing a critical mineral, which is nickel. And I get back to my original point. I mean, the development that we're looking at here is a big mine, big nickel output. So I think they'll come to a point where we'll take it so far as a project and we'll say, okay, we're ready to build. It's like, well, where do we put this nickel? What do we do with it? So I think we've always got to be conscious of those 5 key points from the critical minerals policy in Canada. And by doing that, I think we'll always stay on sides with government. So
yeah, definitely. So lastly, just to wrap this up, what do you think makes your company different to others in this space as an interesting investment opportunity for those listening?
Well, there's a few points. I mean, first of all, let's talk about where we operate. We're in Canada. So, we've all spoken about the Canadian government and their view on critical minerals, nickel being one of them. So we like the commodity, we like nickel. A big one that we haven't touched on is the team. So the team that's working with me, I've got Peter Breeze, who's my chairman. I've got Tolga, Kalova, and Rob Jewson on the board. So we've got a very, very strong board, very strong board. The management team, my executive, Hugo Truter, Malcolm Titley, Rob Slater, these are guys, we've worked together on a number of projects over 20 odd years, right? Including Lionel, which was one of the biggest nickel producers in the world when we sold for $7 billion. We were all part of the executive. Then we did Mantra Resources, we sold for $1 billion, also TSX listed. And then we did Asanko Gold, which, was took over with a JV with Goldfields. So we've worked together for a long time. And I think as an investor, people just want to look at track record. And I think as a group with Peter as chairman, and Peter was CEO of those companies whilst we all worked together, we've got a way of doing things. So we've got a good track record. I think that differentiates us from some companies. Some companies have great teams as well. Some companies are still, what do we do with this? So we've got a pretty good idea what we've done. We've built mines, we've developed mines, we've got good relationship with shareholders who have made money out of us. So I think our relationship with our First Nation group is spot on. And I think, we continue to grow that. Never drop your guard there. But that is something that's in place that allows us to do what we want to do. I think that's a very good, positive point. And let's not forget about the gold, right? We've got 1.5 million ounces of gold. And, it's a nice problem to have. So I know there's some investors out there want to get exposure to gold. Well, we will be announcing very soon some work we'll be doing on the gold. I'm very conscious of the fact we've got the gold, and I know that some of our investors are invested in Aston because of the gold, not the nickel. So, but yeah, people can get exposed to gold and to nickel as well. So in this company, so yeah, I think they're pretty good points to have a look. And at the moment now, as a lot of companies are, we've been whacked on the stock exchange. So I'll always say this: it's a good time to buy. Cheap, Josh. It's been a tough time the last couple of months.
Well, thank you so much for your time today, Russell. It's been great to hear all of your news, all of your updates, and hear more about the company. We really do appreciate your time.
That's great. Well, thanks for the opportunity and nice meeting you.
No problem. For anyone that would like to find out more, please head to astonminerals.com. This interview was brought to you by Mines and Money in association with Red Cloud. Thank you so much for watching.
Resourcing tomorrow, accelerating the energy transition. 100 plus countries represented. And together with government representatives, mining and energy professionals, ESG experts, financial and professional services, industry associations, investors, and consultants, Resourcing Tomorrow will address critical mineral supply, the energy transition, environmental resilience, the circular economy, ESG, our future workforce, AI automation and machine learning, digitalization, mineral processing and plant optimization, exploration and development projects. Have your say in the future of our industry. Join us for Resourcing Tomorrow from 28 to 30 November 2023. Register today